Hello, so good day everyone. So today we're going to have a reflection and analysis video. Actually it's not a video, but actually it's a podcast. Okay, reviewing the literature written by Nadine Gordimer, which is Once Upon a Time. So before we're going to focus on our reflection, on my reflection or analysis about this written literature, have a quick um, let's have a quick read about the literature, which is the Once Upon a Time. Okay, so someone has written to ask me to contribute to a book of stories for children. I reply that I don't write children's stories, and he writes back that at a recent book fair, a certain author said every writer should write at least one story for children. I think of sending a podcast saying I don't accept that I should write anything. And then last night I woke up or was wakened without knowing what I heard. A voice in my mind, a sound, a creaking of the kind made by one foot after one another along a wooden floor. I listened with concentration. Again, the creaking. I was staring at the door in the dark. The house I sleep in is built on broken ground. Far under the house, tunnels of gold mines have hollowed the rock below. The missed beats of my heart faded like the last sounds of the wooden xylophones made by Choppy and Chonga, migrant miners who might have been under me in the earth. Those men might be buried there, now in the deepest of tombs. I couldn't find a position in which my mind would let go of my body, let me go to sleep again. So I began to tell myself a story, a bedtime story. In a house in a suburb, in a city, there were a man and his wife who loved each other very much and were living happily ever after. They had a little boy and they loved him very much. They had a cat and a dog that the little boy loved very much. They had a car and a van for holidays and a fenced swimming pool, so the little boy and his friends would not fall in and drown. They had a trustworthy housemaid and a gardener who was highly recommended by the neighbors. For when they began to live happily ever after, they were warned. But that wise old witch, the husband's mother, not to take people off the street. Their pet dog was licensed. They were insured, and the local neighborhood watch gave them with a sign for their gates. Laddered, you have been warned, over the figure of a robber. He was masked. It could not be said if he was black or white, and showed the homeowner was no racist. It was not possible to insure the house, the swimming pool, or the car against riot damage. There were riots, but these were outside the city, where people of another color lived. These people were not allowed into the suburb except as housemaids and gardeners, so there was nothing to fear. The husband told the wife, yet she was afraid that someday such people might come up the street and tear off the sign, "You have been warned," and open the gates and come in. "Nonsense, my dear," said the husband. "There are police and soldiers in tear gas and guns to keep them away." But to please her, for he loved very much, and buses were being burned, cars broken into, and school children shot by the police in neighborhoods out of sight and hearing the suburb, he put electronically controlled gates around the house. The riots were stopped, but there were many robberies in the suburb, and somebody's housemaid was tied up by thieves. The housemaid of the man and wife and little boy was so upset by this that she asked her employers to have bars attached to the doors and windows of the house and an alarm system put in. The wife said, "She is right. Let us listen to her." So from every window and door in the house, where they were living happily ever after they now saw the trees and sky through bars. The alarm was often answered, it seemed, by other burglar alarms in other houses, set off by pet cats or mice. The neighborhood soon became used to it. Under the noise, thieves broke into homes, taking away television, sets, cameras, and radios, jewelry, and clothing. And they stopped to drink the whiskey. Insurance companies did not pay back for whiskey. Then people who were not trusted, housemaids and gardeners, hung around the suburb because they were unemployed. Some asked for a job wedding or painting a roof, anything, boss, madam. But the man and his wife remembered the warning about taking people off the street. Some drank liquor and trashed the street with bottles. Some begged, waiting for the man or his wife to drive the car out of their home. They sat with their feet in the streets under the jacaranda trees of the beautiful suburb, and sometimes fell asleep lying in front of the gates in the afternoon sun. The wife could never see anyone go hungry. She sent the trusted housemaid out with bread and tea. But the housemaid said these were loafers and hooligans who would come and tie her up. The husband said, "She's right. Listen to her. You only encourage them with your bread and tea. They are looking for their chance." "You are right," said the wife. "Then the wall should be higher." And the wise old witch, the husband's mother, paid for the extra bricks as her Christmas present to her son and his wife. The little boy got a spaceman outfit and a book of fairy tales. But every week there were more reports of break-ins and daylight in the middle of the night, in the early hours of the morning, and even the lovely summer twilight. When the man and wife and the little boy took the pet dog for its walk around the neighborhood, they no longer looked at the houses hidden behind security fences and walls. While the little boy and the pet dog raced ahead, the husband and wife decided only one security system was worth buying. It was the ugliest but most honest. Placed the length of walls, it was a long coil of shining metal blades, so there would be no way of climbing over it, and no way through without getting struck in its fangs. There would be no way out. Only a struggle getting bloodier and bloodier, a deeper and sharper hooking and tearing of flesh. The wife shook to look at it. "You're right," said the husband. "Anyone would think twice." And they noticed a small sign on the wall. "Call Dragon's Teeth, the people for total security." The next day, workmen came and put razor-bladed coils around the walls of the house. The sunlight flashed and slashed off the blades. The razor thorns circled the home, shining. One evening, the mother read the little boy to sleep with a fairy story from the book the wise old witch had given him at Christmas. The next day, he pretended to be the prince who braves the thorns to enter the palace and kiss the sleeping beauty back to life. He set a ladder next to the wall. The shining coiled tunnel was just wide enough for his little boy body to crawl in. And with the first fixing of his razor teeth in his knees and hands and head, he screamed and struggled deeper into its tangle. The trusted housemaid and the gardener, whose day it was, came running, the first to see and to scream with him, and the gardener tore his hands, trying to get at the little boy. Then the man and his wife burst wildly into the garden, and for some reason, the alarm set off against the screams while the bleeding mass of the little boy was hacked out of the security coil with saws and wire cutters, and they carried it, the man, the wife, the hysterical trusted housemaid, and the weeping gardener, into the house. So, my reflection in this story actually is once upon a time is a story that shows how can a person overthinks and how can a parent contribute to his and her child actually. At the very beginning of the story, I've observed that our author of the day, which is Mrs. Nadine Gordimer, Mrs. or Miss, somehow applied her experience during that time, which is some audience requested to make children's stories, but somehow she rejected the request. When she was about to sleep, she was alarmed by the sound of a wood creaking from her house. That made her think that what if it's an intruder? Because the street she's been living had been experiencing robbers or people getting into their houses. Because of what happened, she decided to write a story which is entitled Once Upon a Time. The story narrates about a certain family and a housemaid, and one night the mother reads the story of Sleeping Beauty to his son. That gave the boy a huge interest on the prince as he fight his way through a dense thicket of thorns just to save the princess. Then one day, the boy pretends to be the prince, and the metal coil for security is the dense thicket of thorns, is the obstacle for him to conquer and save the princess. But the boy prince climbs, or but as the boy prince climbs the metal coil, it pierced the boy. The maid tried to save the boy. He tried to save the boy prince, but it was too late because the prince bled to death. The story usually gives a message on how riots or chaos can trigger an overthinking mind, but somehow it does not affect only an elderly but also on innocent childs or children. The story also reflects on the quotation of Albert Einstein: if you want a child to be smart, read them fantasies. If you want them to be even more smarter, read them more fantasies. And for the analysis, I think we're going to have or apply the psychoanalytic analysis because as Nadine Gordimer narrates or writes the story Once Upon a Time, we can see how the society affected the parents. The reading of fantasy stories that triggers the mind of a child. We can see that the parents of the child had impulsive thoughts that even the child inherited it from his parents. The parents installed a security system that did not even think of making it childproof or thinking of what may be the consequences will be given or taken after they install it. Actually, moreover, they are careless on their child. They think that the maid can watch their son 24/7. Maybe they did not even explain to the child the security system that they installed.